welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, where we mix our favorite beverage and talk of your Minnesota Vikings.
Hello and welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, our third episode here, coming in live. I got Myles Gorham, Tyler Forness, and our special guest this week, amongst a super busy schedule, Jordan Reid. How are you guys doing?
Good, excited.
Good.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
So, I appreciate you guys making the time. I
Is
just
Tyler
want to dive
dressed
right
up
in.
for this occasion? I love it.
I'm sure he is.
This is just my normal work attire, you know. That working at a liquor store, you know, you got to dress classy.
For sure.
I just want to dive right in. We'll skip over the drinks part, and we're just going to get right into some Senior Bowl stuff. It's probably one of the most exciting times because it's been a while since we've seen some college players, and all the Vikings fans want to know, who are we going for? Who should we look at? And so, JR, I'm going to let you kind of take it off from the bat, but who's been like most impressive thus far from what you've seen?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of guys. It just depends on the position that you want to talk about. But I'll stick to the Vikings' needs as far as interior defensive line and edge rusher. I think those are two of the bigger needs that they need on the defensive side of the ball. And there's been a lot of players that stand out. But if we're just talking about the guys that really fit what the Vikings have looked for in years past, there's two guys that I think that are going to be very high up on their list. And that's Levi Onwuzurike, the defensive tackle from Washington, who didn't practice today, but he had a standout very first day. I'm just talking to some people that are actually down there in Mobile. There's some people that actually think he's the best interior defensive lineman in this class. So that's something that is a little bit of mixed opinions right now. I think the top two guys, I should say, Onwuzurike, Christian Barmore, and then Davion Nixon. Those are pretty much the consensus top three guys at the top of the board right now. But another one that I talked about a little bit early on in the year that didn't really get a whole bunch of buzz coming into the year, but he had a really nice year last year, and his name is Reid Ogundije, and he's a player from Notre Dame. I tweeted about him a little bit earlier, and Myles sent Twitter into a frenzy just because he falls into the category of what the Vikings have looked for last year. He's about 6'4", about 255 pounds, but he has that long wingspan and those long arms, and he's the type of project that the Vikings have taken on day two, late day two, early day three that we've seen in years past, whether it's a Daniil Hunter or even guys later on in the draft like a Stephen Weatherly that have went on to have a lot of success. So keep an eye on Ogundije and then on Onwuzurike. Those are two guys that I think are definitely going to be in the Vikings wheelhouse.
Awesome. Tyler, you share those same names, or you got some different ones for us that you've been looking at?
I was just watching some of the practice right before we jump on here, and Onwuzurike I haven't had a chance to watch him yet, and his first step is something else. Like, I yelped a little bit. My wife was like, "What in the world is going on right now?" So he was fantastic. A couple names that I really noticed right after that. Oklahoma center Creed Humphrey feels like he's been in Norman for like the last decade. He really stood out day one, and I haven't had a chance to watch day two, but he had a fantastic day. Didn't really lose any reps. Looked to have had a solid anchor, and I was really impressed by that. I'm not quite sure if he's going to be able to translate to guard as far as moving up to the next level, and you don't want to put Bradbury in that spot. But he's somebody to kind of keep your eye out for, especially if he ends up kind of sliding down the board, because he didn't have that great of a senior year. And then like a late day two, early day three, like wide receiver 3 option. Shi Smith out of South Carolina had a fantastic first day. Very, very smooth route runner, quick feet, created separation really well, and did a great job catching the football. And that's obviously number one with wide receivers. You want to make sure they catch the football. And I was really excited to see both of those guys shine out. And, of course, the love of my life, D'Wayne Eskridge. He was fantastic as well. And he is there was talk from Todd McShay that he may go round 1. I think that's a little rich, but it's really cool to see him getting love out there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think right now, draft kind of positions where the people might fall in the draft are going to be all over the board. But this is definitely a time for a lot of people to shine. And it sounds like from your guys' comments that there's a lot of players really stepping up there. Myles, are there any names that JR and Tyler mentioned that you would want What's your preference, I should say, out of all those names? If you could have one, who are you going with?
Well, I mean, besides the edge out of Notre Dame that JR mentioned, I think I'm a big Shi Smith guy. I liked him last year. I was actually hoping he was going to come out last year out of South Carolina. I like his game a lot. I think he's got some twitch to him, and I think he can create separation pretty well. But a guy that I like that I'm actually just starting to learn and know, but like seeing some of his film, Demetric Felton out of UCLA. He's the running back wide receiver hybrid. So anybody that follows me and has followed me for a while, I was a big Curtis Samuel fan coming out of college. I'm not putting him at that level, but I think there's some of that like ability. You see the twitchiness, you see some of the route running ability that I didn't expect from a running back. But that could be the kind of guy. I don't know if he can return punts or kicks or not, but if he can do a little bit of that, that could be a guy that could fit in as like a gadget type player the Vikings could look at, and a guy that they could use in special situations and in the return game. So that's someone I actually really like on like a day 3.
Do you think the Vikings would actually utilize a gadget player?
No, but I would like them to. I would like them to.
Fair enough. Have there been any disappointments thus far? I know it's only been a couple days of practice, but are there any disappointments, people who aren't kind of living up to what we hoped out at the Senior Bowl?
Devontae Smith.
I think the Alabama guys, really haven't lived up to the hype. Offensive lineman, Leatherwood's kind of struggling, and he came out and said early this week that he's just going to play offensive tackle. That's all he wanted to play. He made that be known. And the big thing about him is a lot of people are thinking that he could be a guard. He could be better at guard. That's what he played during his freshman and sophomore seasons. And then he played right tackle his junior year, and then he played left tackle his junior and his senior year. Early on in his career, he played a little bit of right tackle when he was backing up Jonah Williams. So I think he has some questions to answer about that. I think there's some lower half stiffness there with him, and that's really been evident this week. He's really struggling with those up the field type of edge rushers that can get up and under him a little bit. So there's still going to be those huge question marks out there about him as far as if he is a tackle or a guard. Deontay Brown has really struggled a little bit as well. I think is a little bit too heavy right now. Came in at 364 pounds, which was a bit of an issue early on in his career. I know during I believe it was his sophomore year going into his junior year, there was some weight concerns with him and how he ballooned up, even up to the 370-pound range. So I think he needs to get his weight down a little bit, probably around the 340 to 345 range. I think that would be a little bit more comfortable area for him. So the Alabama guys, they've struggled a little bit so far.
Could that benefit the Vikings potentially? I know I heard Myles mention Devontae Smith. I don't know if we'd actually pull the trigger on him at 14, but are any of these people targets for the Vikings, given that they're underperforming?
I doubt Deontay Brown will even be on their board just because of his size and then the scheme that he fits best in. He's more of a man gap power type blocking scheme as opposed to a zone guy just because he's not a great athlete. But I think Leatherwood definitely could be there for him if they want to trade up into the second round. I think that's probably where he's going to end up going. I think there's going to be some teams that are scared to take him in the first half of the first round just because of the lower half stiffness that he has right now. And are you really going to take a guy that is a fringe guard or a tackle that early in the first round? I just don't see that happening right now. So I still think he'll go somewhere in the top 45, top 50. I think that's fair for him. But I mean, he fits well in the Viking system. I think I graded him as a guard. Honestly, I think he's going to be better as a guard. I just have some huge concerns with him out on the perimeter by himself. But I definitely think he could be a guy that definitely could fill in at that left guard spot. He would be a huge upgrade over Dakota Dozier.
I don't think it's hard to upgrade that spot, to be honest. But Tyler, any disappointments that you're kind of taking note on?
Well, I don't know if you can necessarily call it a disappointment, but the quarterbacks, it's nowhere near what we saw last year. I'm sure he's just a phenomenal person, but I don't understand why Ian Book's at this Senior Bowl. I just don't think he's any good. And you've got guys like Shane Buechele, who would just have like a top 2 arm in Mobile right now, and he's sitting at home. Like, just watching some of the receiver one-on-ones is a little frustrating with how poor a lot of the passes were. But you did see a lot of good things from Mac Jones. And I think somebody is going to con themselves into wanting to take Felipe Franks because his arm is fantastic. None of the rest of his game is, but he's got a rifle for an arm. And then the left tackle out of Northern Iowa, Spencer Brown. I thought he really struggled yesterday, dealing with a lot of these speed rushers. Leverage was just not great, and obviously that's a big concern when you're talking about a guy who's 6'8" and he's pretty lean. I think he weighed in at about 308. I heard he did a little bit better today, but there's some real concerns there when you're a guy who's that big and you struggle like bending at the waist. So that's something I'm going to keep my eye on, because I think he's somebody that the Vikings may want to target in like the middle rounds if they're looking to improve that tackle spot and keep Ezra Cleveland at guard long term.
Myles, any thoughts?
Nope. No, these guys got it covered. Like I said, I'm trying to catch up a little bit. So I was watching some of the one-on-ones from yesterday. But overall, I'm just trying to get myself caught up in kind of the process. I've been behind this year, but overall, all these guys hit on a lot of the names that I've seen so far.
Yeah, I know for me, I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this show when it's all said and done, because I get all these names flying at me right now. So I'm going to have to go keep a closer eye on them. Are there any sleepers out there? And when I say sleepers, like, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, but somebody who, maybe has just gone under the radar because of, a COVID-19 year, right? Like, was a big name kind of heading into 2020, COVID-19 hit. And so maybe a lot of people don't know about them. JR or Tyler, whoever wants to take that one.
If we're just talking about this event, I would say Marvin Wilson definitely could be one name. I think he definitely could interest the Vikings, especially if they're just looking for that big body guy in the middle. And I know they have Michael Pierce coming back this year coming up, but I think Marvin Wilson definitely could be some depth for them. His stock isn't nearly of what it was coming into the year. He battled a knee injury coming into the year, and then he only played, I believe it was 4 games this year. Did not put some good tape out there either, but he came in much lighter than what he played at last year. I think he was hovering around 330, 335 during the year, and he weighed 319 at the Senior Bowl. So that was good for him. He looked really energetic during the first day, but it's just a matter of him. Pass rush is always going to be the big negative against him. He's just not a great pass rusher, but he's a guy that's going to clog the middle. He's athletic, and I think the Vikings just need that right now, just because they don't have anybody that can just stand there and just clog the middle. They just have a bunch of undersized guys that don't have a lot of twitch, but those are 2 things that Marvin Wilson does bring to the table. But if you're looking for a guy as far as a backup to Michael Pierce, maybe in the 3rd round, I think Marvin Wilson, I wouldn't say definitely would be there, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was there, just because it's unfortunate what happened to his stock, just because he was a 1st-round guy coming into the year, but he just hasn't looked like that same guy that we saw a couple years ago.
Any thoughts, Tyler?
I got a couple guys, and I'm not quite sure how much of the sleeper the first one is, but I think some of these wide receivers are just going to get buried in this class because there's just so many good ones. And Oklahoma State's Tylan Wallace just balled out yesterday. Did a great job. As one of his biggest things has always been the deep ball. Excellent body control, contested catches, but he's doing a decent job getting some separation, running some clean routes, and I think even though he's not going to have that top end speed that you really expect with a deep threat kind of receiver, I think he's going to be a guy that can be really successful. And then one of my guys, Florida's Trevon Grimes, I think he's really going to get buried in this process because there's just a glut of receivers. I don't think he's on the same level, but remember, Stephon Diggs got buried in 2015 because that was considered a historic class. And this class is probably going to end up a little bit better than that, if not a lot better. Grimes can do a little bit of everything, and I think teams are really going to value the fact that at Florida, everybody plays special teams. Last year, they had 4 guys come out, 3 got drafted, and they all ended up playing all 16 games. So he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He's 6'4", 210, runs good routes, great at the catch point, and somebody that you're probably going to be able to steal in round 4 or 5.
I hear you guys talking about a lot of different names, but, I just have to ask, let's stick to the defensive side of the ball here. What are you looking for in some of your defensive line reps, for example? I know that's a need for the Vikings, whether it's interior or on the edge. So when these guys are out there practicing, what are you looking at to see if they're doing well? Do you take into account who they're going against, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's something that you definitely have to take into consideration. But at the Senior Bowl, I treat it as a level playing field, just because everybody there, they're at the same event, and it doesn't really matter what helmet that they have on, just because it's a privilege to be there. These are the top 136 guys in the country, according to the scouts across the board, just because every team gets priority as far as who they want at this event. So every individual that's practicing, this is considered the best of the best. But some of the things I look for as far as an interior defensive lineman, I want to see how explosive they are. You see guys like Onwuzurike, that first step that you love to see. His first step has just been phenomenal. During the first day of practice, he didn't practice today, but you saw the first step. It looks a little bit different than some of his surroundings, and just how well they're staying out. Also, the power. They do a double team drill with the offensive lineman, so you want to see how well they're able to sustain at the point of attack. Just because whether you're a one technique or a three technique, you're going to have to face a double team at some point in time. We've seen guys like Shamar Stephen and Armon Watts and Jaleel Johnson, they've just been obliterated out of gaps just because they're not able to sustain and not able to anchor at the point of attack. So just how well they're able to take on those double teams. And as far as edge rushers, just how creative they are as far as pass rushers, just because those guys that are supreme creators or ones that are just that multiple piece of clay, I think that can be the difference between a guy going in the first round or late day 2 or early day 3, depending on how much of a project that they are. So just twitch, hand-to-hand combat, creativity, and then just their anchor ability or ability to sustain in gaps. Those are some of the things that I look for in defensive linemen.
Is this perhaps maybe like the biggest stage for prospects to really propel their draft stock, or would you say maybe the combine's a little bit heavier than that?
Well, I mean, just this year, obviously, it's the Senior Bowl since there's no combine, but it's just a matter of, I think with this one, what makes the Senior Bowl so different is that you're going up against actual competition, which means you're going against an actual individual. And really, the Senior Bowl is the first time that they get to see you against a level playing field. So, for example, like these small school players, whenever you're going to a practice, if you're a scout, you're just on the road going to a practice, they're going to be going against maybe a walk-on here and there. And that's just not going to be a fair assessment of what exactly they can do. But Quentin Miners, for example, from Wisconsin Whitewater, he's playing on a level playing field now, even a bump up in competition. And now we see how well he's been able to adjust to the speed of the game. And then just the surroundings that he's going against, they're all foreign to him, but it hasn't been a culture shock to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyler, I know that you mentioned some defensive linemen, and JR kind of covered what he watches for that. Let's switch over to wide receiver. I know you have some guys that you like over there. What are you looking for in their reps in practice heading into the game?
I think there's a lot of different things you can look for, and one of the big things is you want to see how quick they can gain separation. How are they utilizing their releases? Are they varying them from rep to rep? How are they able to get that quick little initial burst? How are they utilizing leverage at the top of the stem? And where is their separation coming from? Is it because they're a great route runner? Is it because they're a dynamic athlete? Or is it a little bit of both? And if they're struggling, why are they struggling? Are they just not good enough as a route runner? Is their athletic profile just not quite where it needs to be? And then at the catch point, how are they catching the ball? Do they have strong hands? Are they body catchers? When they're tracking the ball and going up for it, how well are they doing those things? And it's just kind of every route's a little bit different. You see guys running a lot of whips and ins and corners, and just how are they utilizing these routes? Because the defender doesn't really know what's going on. They have no help. So how they're kind of utilizing everything that they're doing and how they're counteracting how the corner's playing them. I saw a rep from Shi Smith yesterday where Tyree Gillespie was 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. Shi Smith ran right at him and Gillespie didn't move. And that's just easy money for a good receiver. He ended up getting about 6 yards of separation, made a great catch down the field. But if you got a guy that's up in your face, jamming you at the line of scrimmage, how are you reacting to that? Are you being knocked off balance? Are you still able to continue your route the way you planned on it? What kind of adjustments are you making? And you're kind of looking at a little bit of everything. But one of the tough parts is every rep is a little bit different because of how you're playing versus how the defender's playing. And I think the variables in comparison to the trench play really makes a big difference, because there's just so many little nuances and details with receiver play that you need to look for.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it. I know you got to hop off here, so I want to give you an opportunity before you leave to add any final thoughts on the Senior Bowl before you take off.
Yeah, the Senior Bowl is, as Jordan was kind of talking about, it's one of the biggest stages for prospects, and that it's unfortunate for these guys this year. They're not able to kind of go through media day and have kind of a normal environment. But it's one of the best places, not just for prospects, but for people like us who just want to go and watch these guys play and get a real sense for who they are. You know, talking with guys last year, like I think I talked to Zach Bond for 3 minutes last year about Culver's. Like these guys are just good people, and I highly recommend everybody go down there if you can. The food's incredible, and the atmosphere is it's fun. It's just sitting in the stands, watching these guys play, and then if you want, you can just go into the Exos room and grind practice film for hours. It's just a fun time, and you can learn a lot about these guys. As Jordan said, it's a level playing field. Everybody is an equal.
Awesome. Thank you for hopping on, Tyler. JR and Myles, stick around. We just got a little bit more. I got a few questions left. I know you're both busy guys, but thanks again, Tyler, and we'll catch you later. As for JR and Myles, you know, I know that this is like the top of the top prospects. Who is someone that was snubbed that you would have liked to have seen here?
That's a good question. You're making me dig deep, trying to think who's a good senior that should have been
I didn't
there.
throw this one on the list here today.
He wasn't snubbed, but I would love to see Travis Etienne here just to see him compete. Najee Harris is here, so I would have loved to see him just show up and compete. And of course, I'm being a little bit selfish, but I would love to see Devonta Smith out there competing. Seeing him on a level playing field, just like Mac Jones is going out there on a level playing field from different surroundings. And that's a big thing that everybody wanted to see for Mac Jones, just how well he could perform with Steve Sarkisian not being the guy behind the curtain calling plays, and then having all those great surroundings at Alabama. Just how well was he going to do without those variables attached to him? But Etienne is one guy that I love to see here, but that's just me being a little bit selfish. He doesn't need the event, but I would have loved to see him come out there and compete.
Myles, I know you said you're a little behind the 8 ball here, but are there any prospects that you were hoping to maybe see at the Senior Bowl?
I'm a big Travis Etienne guy. That's been my RB1 for like 2 or 3 years now. So I like Travis Etienne. So it'd have been nice to see him. But for me, running backs, you're only going to get so much from a running back in these situations. I mean, it's nice to see them in pass pro. Nice to see how they handle their one-on-one situations and see their vision and feet. But overall, Etienne's probably my biggest one. But yeah, I wouldn't know about some of the other guys. Trying to think about like what other snubs. Like I know last year Tyler Johnson from the Gophers was I considered a snub, but I can't really think of anybody this year.
Do the Vikings have coaches out there? I thought they did. I thought they had some coaches out at the Senior Bowl.
Coaches and scouts out there.
Yeah, everybody's there.
But no, sorry, I probably misphrased that. Do they have coaches like coaching the Senior Bowl?
No,
it's just the Dolphins and the Panthers coaching staff.
For some reason, I thought I saw something, but whatever. We'll just move past that. Aside from kind of what you're seeing on film, I know before you hopped on this show, JR, you were talking about interviewing some prospects. What's that like? What do you try and get out of that? I know you build your big draft profiles every year, and so you add a lot of background information there. But what are you trying to pull from those interviews?
Well, you just get to know the person off of the field and really what makes them tick. I know that's kind of cliche for the scouting industry and then just talking about players in general, but you get to know them as a person. You get to find out what guys have personalities, what players are dry, And then if you have injury questions about them, you get to ask a little bit about that with them, just because you have some players that didn't look the same in some games, but comes to find out they were battling an injury. So little things like that help you figure out, just because when you're watching the coach's film or you're watching the game on YouTube, whatever it may be, however you consume your film, you have some questions about some players, but it helps you peel the curtain back a little bit with some of them. Like, I love the interview portion just because I like seeing the player off the helmet, or I like getting to know the players with their helmets off. That's one thing that I really enjoy about the prospect, just because I can turn on a game on YouTube and figure out who Mac Jones is as a player, but I don't know behind the scenes that both his parents are a lawyer and he wants to be a lawyer as well. And that's a big part of being a quarterback, just because that tells me that he's a very supreme and smart individual. So little things like that, I think it helps you really galvanize and put all the puzzle pieces together as far as their resume and their portfolio as a draft prospect.
Have you noticed interviews being any different in a COVID year than they are? I know, obviously, you're doing it virtually, which is a little bit different. It's kind of probably a little bit difficult to pull a player aside, after a practice and just kind of have a one-on-one. Have you noticed anything different in interviews this year?
Yeah, so all of them are virtual on Zoom, and you really basically have to wait in line pretty much to ask your question. You have to raise your hand and all this stuff, as opposed to last year. They're just at a big podium, and it's pretty much whoever shouts first gets to ask their question. So that's the big difference about that. But it's fun. It's fun just meeting all these guys and just figuring them out as a person. So there's been a lot of interesting guys so far.
Who's your favorite so far that you've interviewed?
Um, Richie Grant from UCF is one that was really interesting. Has a really nice background story. Played both corner and safety when he was there. I like him a lot. I think the Vikings are going to like him a lot as well. He's had a really good first 2 days of practice, and the Vikings have a huge need at safety, obviously, and I think they're going to have a lot of interest in him as well.
Sweet. Um, I all this knowledge I just have to kind of like soak it all in here. I really didn't have a lot more prepared uh, for you and for Tyler and Miles, but before I send it off here, I know you both are busy, but you got any bold predictions heading into the Senior Bowl? Who's going to have a big game?
Um, I think D'Wayne Eskridge is going to have a huge game. He's special, man. He just looked different from everybody out there. And we talk about these players that have really helped themselves at the Senior Bowl, like a Debo Samuel, Terry McLaurin. He's having that type of performance at the Senior Bowl. And there's always those guys that stick out like a sore thumb, just because they just look different from everybody there. And that's what Eskridge has been so far. And it's not just from a receiver standpoint. He's returned kicks, he's returned punts, and then he's turned around. He's been a gunner as well. So those type of things are really going to help him on his resume, just because being a rookie is all about what can you do as far as your versatility. Most receivers coming into training camp, you have to play special teams. It's usually receivers and defensive backs. That's pretty much mandatory across the board for most teams, and he's definitely going to be a guy that falls in line, whether it's at a return specialist or even just a gunner or just running down there on kickoff. He's going to have to play special teams in some form or fashion. So Eskridge, I think he's going to have a huge day.
Miles, any predictions from you?
I mean, I think Eskridge is a good one. I like Tony. How did I blank on his name? His first name.
Kadarius Toney.
Thank you, Kadarius Toney. I mean, he's the kind of guy I want to see in the game, because he's a gamer. He's the type of guy. I'm not saying he's struggled in one-on-ones, but I think there's a little bit more of a guys that are just gamers. They're just better when you put them in situations like, and you move him around the formations and stuff like that. So he's the kind of guy I want to see. The kid from the Gophers, Benjamin Juice. I don't remember how to say his last
Benjamin
name.
St. Juice, the corner.
St. Juice, yeah, the corner. I like his length. He's a guy that I'm a little bit intrigued by, and watching some of his games with the Gophers. He's a guy I just want to see, continue to succeed, and hopefully he could be like a day 3 pick.
Sweet. Well, to send us out here, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask each of you, now that we're, kind of almost to the off-season mode, who you're wanting at 14 outside of the Senior Bowl, or they could be playing in the Senior Bowl. and then a Super Bowl prediction, since I don't know if I'll have either of you on before the Super Bowl. So, Myles, you can start us off with a pick and for the pick 14 and the Super Bowl.
Man, pick 14. I would like it to be a weapon. Obviously, like we've talked about this ad nauseum. I mean, I think the Vikings should not even just look to add to the receiving core, but I think they should also be looking down the road at like the potential of not even considering replacing Adam Thielen, but more of like finding someone that can help fill those shoes because he's going to be 31. I think he's going to age pretty well, but you'd rather get ahead of guys before they the potentially like hit that downslope. So I would like to see the Vikings add a weapon. I think that's an easy way for them to create instant impact into the offense this year, while also planning for the future. So I think a receiver like Jalen Waddle. I don't think Devontae Smith's going to be there, but like I think Jalen Waddle would be a perfect fit in this system and as a deep threat too that this team's missing, or could use in
Super
addition
Bowl?
to Justin Jefferson. Super Bowl. I'll say I'm going to go Chiefs. I mean, I just think they're just too unstoppable, and I just don't think the Bucks have enough on defense to match up. And I'd say maybe 34-27 type of game.
All right, JR.
14 is tough just because this isn't like last year where we knew they were going to pick a corner, they were going to pick a receiver just because they had to replace Diggs and they lost so much in the secondary with Rhodes, Waynes, and Alexander gone. So I'm going to go edge rusher, even though that really goes against a lot of their principles. I think Kwity Paye or Gregory Rousseau will be great picks. It really doesn't matter either one. It's just a matter of what type of flavor that they like and how much patience they're going to have with either one. Paye is the more, I would say, NFL ready guy right now. I think he's a little bit more versatile as well, but I think Rousseau has the higher ceiling, just a matter of how much patience they have with him. But I think playing opposite of Danielle Hunter will help him a lot as he goes through his progression and his development. And I think a guy like Andre Patterson getting his hands on him will help him tremendously as well. And anytime you're 6'6", 270 pounds plus, and you put up 15 and a half sacks in only 2 years, your second year playing defensive end, that's obviously going to get a lot of notice from NFL scouts. But I think he will be a really nice piece for them to add opposite of Danielle Hunter. So Rousseau or Paye will be fine with me, but I'm in agreement with Myles, but I'm not going to prepare myself for heartbreak just because they're probably not going to take a wide receiver at that spot. I just don't see it happening, especially with how well Jefferson played last year and them running only so many 3 wide receiver sets. Wide receiver 3 just isn't a huge need in their eyes, even though I would love for them to add a weapon. But as far as the Super Bowl, man, it's hard for me to go against Tom Brady. It's so hard, especially playing at home. But the Chiefs are just a machine, man. I got to go with the Chiefs. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, even though the Bucks, I think they're going to be able to get some pressure on Mahomes. But we saw what Tyreek Hill was able to do, that secondary, last time they played early on in the year. And I just think they're a team on a mission. I think if you're not going to score at least 35 points, you're not going to beat the Chiefs. And I think Brady is capable of that. But I just think Mahomes is on a different level right now.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys on pretty much all your points. I would love a wide receiver at 14. I don't think it's going to happen, and it's going to kill me to see. I just have a feeling someone's going to fall, and they just won't take them, and Viking fans will be irate, and such is life, I suppose. But
the only thing, if they don't take a receiver at 14 that falls, they should trade back.
I mean, that would be the best opportunity to snag a second round pick, right? Potentially, maybe a late second, but
I would bet a heavy wager that they trade back. Heavy wager.
I would
no
too.
Second round pick. I would bet a heavy wager that they trade back.
Get those T-shirts printed, Myles. Team trade back, or it's back in action.
Yeah. Hey, we've been on that.
I want to thank you guys for your time tonight. I know, JR, you got a busy couple days coming up with more Senior Bowl stuff, but make sure to get you on before the draft, and thanks for coming on again. Take us home, David.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Hey, everybody. just wanted to thank everybody for showing up. I saw some new faces. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Stan. I appreciate it. I very much look forward to hearing more about the Senior Bowl and some of these prospects. And who knows, maybe at 14, the Vikings may even take a quarterback if one falls. Join us tomorrow night for Vikings Hot Take. Same time, 8 p.m. Central. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, enjoy your beverage of choice. And as always, Skol Vikings! Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.